Imagine being 10 years old, waking up to an empty stomach, and knowing that your parents might not have enough to eat that day. For millions of children in the 1930s, this wasn't imagination, it was reality. The Great Depression wasn't just an economic collapse. It was a daily battle for survival, and children bore the brunt in ways most adults can hardly imagine today. Families across America lost everything. Banks failed, farms went bankrupt, and jobs disappeared overnight. Children didn't just lose toys or treats. They lost their homes, their schools, and sometimes even a chance to just be carefree kids. Childhood, for them, was not a time of wonder. It was a time of struggle. Streets filled with bread lines, and orphanages overflowed with children whose parents couldn't feed them. Take the story of 12-year-old Mary Thompson from Oklahoma. Her family had once owned a small farm, but the Dust Bowl destroyed their crops. Her father traveled from town to town, looking for work, leaving Mary and her siblings to manage the bare essentials at home. Mary's school attendance became irregular because sometimes she had to work, sometimes she had to care for her younger siblings, and sometimes she simply had no shoes to wear to class. Yet, amid this darkness, there were flickers of resilience. Children adapted to survive. They scavenged for scraps, gathered wild fruits, and even sold handmade trinkets or newspapers on street corners. Each act was a lesson in responsibility, a forced initiation into adulthood far too soon. But the emotional toll was heavier than the physical hardships. Shame, fear, and uncertainty shadowed their lives. Many children went to bed hungry, not knowing if tomorrow would bring food. Others witnessed their parents break down under the weight of hopelessness. These kids learned early that life was not fair, and yet they learned to keep going. Even in despair, children found strength in each other. They formed tight-knit bonds, sharing what little they had. Siblings became caregivers. Neighborhoods became communities of survival. And somehow, through the darkness, the spark of childhood curiosity and hope refused to die. Their story is not just about hunger or loss. It's about resilience. About how, even when life stole the comfort of childhood, children still found ways to live, laugh, and dream. And understanding their struggle gives us more than historical knowledge. It gives us perspective on gratitude, empathy, and the human spirit's remarkable endurance. Picture a morning in 1933. The sun rises over a small, crumbling house. Inside, a child wakes to the bitter reality. There's no breakfast. Bread is gone. Milk is gone. Even the simplest meal is a luxury. Yet, despite empty stomachs, children face the day with quiet determination. Hunger was constant, but hope was stubborn. Daily life for kids during the Great Depression was a relentless cycle of survival. Many had to leave school to work. Boys carried newspapers, shined shoes, or helped in factories. Girls washed clothes, took in laundry, or helped prepare meager meals. Playtime was rare, replaced by chores and responsibilities far beyond their years. One vivid story comes from 10-year-old Tommy from Detroit. His father had lost his factory job, and Tommy spent hours after school delivering newspapers. Yet he found small joys, a game of marbles with neighborhood kids, a shared sandwich, even laughter amidst hardship. Tommy learned early that life demanded work, but life also rewarded small victories. Food was scarce, and every meal was a challenge. Families relied on soup kitchens, community donations, and makeshift gardens. Children learned to stretch a single potato into multiple meals. Creativity became survival. Scraps of bread became sandwiches. Leftover vegetables transformed into hearty stews. Resourcefulness was a necessity, not a choice. But poverty didn't just affect the body, it shaped the soul. Children understood sacrifice in ways most adults never would. They shared shoes, rationed treats, and comforted younger siblings. Empathy grew naturally in a world where everyone struggled. The hardships of the Depression forced children to grow up quickly, but they also cultivated courage, compassion, and an unbreakable spirit. Even in the darkest moments, children found laughter. They played with homemade toys, invented games with sticks and stones, and created moments of joy out of scarcity. Hunger could not fully strip away their innocence. It only made their small joys shine brighter. These stories remind us, poverty during the Great Depression wasn't just about missing meals. It was about resilience, ingenuity, and finding hope where others might see none. Children endured, adapted, and in doing so, proved the remarkable strength of the human spirit. It's easy to think that during the Great Depression, childhood was all work, hunger, and hardship. But in the shadows of struggle, children discovered a superpower: imagination. Even with ragged clothes and empty pockets, kids found ways to play, to create, and to escape into worlds of their own making. Take the story of little Benny from Chicago. He didn't have a bike or a ball, but that didn't stop him. He fashioned a makeshift toy car out of an old wooden crate and used sticks for axles. He and his friends raced it down cracked sidewalks, cheering as if they were in the grandest of competitions. For an hour, Benny wasn't poor. He was a champion, a racer, a dreamer. Games were inventive. Kids turned stones into checkers, sticks into swords, and alleys into kingdoms. Street corners became playgrounds. Abandoned lots became football fields. Every scrap of cardboard, every piece of string was a treasure. Play wasn't just fun, it was survival. It was a mental escape from hunger, fear, and uncertainty. Girls found creative ways to make dolls from rags and buttons, often sewing tiny clothes from leftover fabric. Boys built forts from old crates, inventing worlds where they could be heroes and kings. Even chores were gamified. Carrying water from a well could become a race. Washing dishes a contest of speed and skill. The imagination of children transformed scarcity into opportunity. But beyond play, these inventive spirits taught crucial life skills. Problem-solving, resourcefulness, teamwork. These weren't lessons in school. They were survival lessons in the streets and backyards of Depression-era America. Children learned to think on their feet, to improvise, and to find joy in what little they had. Despite the harsh realities, laughter persisted. It bounced off brick walls, echoed through empty streets, and reminded adults, and themselves, that even in despair, life held moments of magic. These stories of creativity are not just nostalgic tales. They're proof that resilience and joy can coexist even in the hardest times. Children in the 1930s didn't just survive, they adapted, played, and thrived in ways that shaped their character forever. Their inventive spirits remind us that even when life strips away comforts, imagination and determination can light the way forward. Imagine growing up before you even understand what stress really means, but living it every single day. That was the reality for children during the Great Depression. Poverty wasn't just a temporary struggle. It was a relentless teacher, and its lessons were harsh, practical, and unrelenting. Kids learned responsibility far earlier than we do today. A 9-year-old like Sarah from Kansas might wake at dawn to milk cows, cook breakfast, and get her siblings ready for school before she even had her own shoes on. There was no room for procrastination. Every task mattered. Every action had consequences. And through this, children built a resilience that would carry them for a lifetime. Work was not optional. It was survival. Boys delivered newspapers, shined shoes, or helped in factories. Girls tended siblings, sewed clothes, or took in laundry. These responsibilities, though forced by circumstance, taught independence, discipline, and endurance. Childhood hardships were shaping adults before their time, shaping problem solvers, caregivers, and leaders. Yet, beyond practical skills, there were emotional lessons. Children learned empathy because suffering was shared. They understood sacrifice because everyone gave up something. They learned patience because waiting for food, for work, for hope was a daily exercise. Hardship built character. And the children who survived didn't just endure. They grew stronger, wiser, and more determined. Some of the most inspiring stories come from kids who turned adversity into opportunity. Young boys who sold newspapers often learned the value of negotiation. Girls who managed household chores mastered organization and efficiency. Even scavenging for food taught strategy and resourcefulness. Life became a continuous classroom, and the curriculum was survival itself. These lessons weren't easy, and they left scars, but they also left strengths. Children of the Great Depression didn't just grow up, they evolved under pressure, learning the skills and resilience most of us can only admire from afar. They remind us that even in extreme hardship, human spirit and determination can thrive. Even in the darkest chapters of the Great Depression, hope refused to disappear. Children who faced unimaginable hardships found ways to survive, to dream, and to inspire. Their stories remind us that resilience is born not in comfort, but in challenge. Take the story of young James from New York City. His family had lost their apartment, and they lived in a crowded shelter. Despite this, James never stopped reading. He borrowed tattered books from the local library, teaching himself about science, history, and the world beyond his small, grim surroundings. That curiosity, fueled by hardship, would later help him become a teacher, passing on knowledge to generations who never knew the despair he had faced. Or consider Mary, a 13-year-old from Oklahoma, whose father had abandoned the family after losing his farm. Mary took care of her siblings, managed meals with whatever scraps she could find, and even mended clothes to sell for a few coins. Years later, Mary became a nurse, dedicating her life to helping children in poverty. Her early struggles had built compassion and tenacity that transformed her life and the lives of others. Even the smallest acts of courage mattered. Children who walked miles to school in worn-out shoes, who shared bread with neighbors, who found joy in a game despite hunger, were quietly defying despair every day. These moments may seem small, but they were monumental in teaching perseverance, hope, and humanity. What these stories teach us today is profound. Adversity can forge strength. Children who survived the 1930s didn't just endure, they thrived in spirit, learned to innovate, and found light in the darkest times. Their lives are a testament that even in hardship, hope can grow, dreams can persist, and the human spirit can rise above circumstance. So, as we reflect on their struggles, we are reminded to never take resilience for granted. We are reminded to find gratitude, to embrace challenges, and to know that even in our toughest moments, we can survive and even thrive, just like the children of the Great Depression.